Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of 3D prototyping in Unity. My name is Kasanas. In the last episode we took care of a little bit of maintenance. Things used to fall off the edge of our screen, off the edge of our platform, and we didn't do anything about it. In the last episode we created our game controller that consists of the game controller itself as well as several game cleaners, and anything that falls off the edge of the platform is now collected by those game cleaners and destroyed. In today's episode, what I'd like to take a look at is a little bit of environmental special effects. In particular, we're going to be taking a look at the creation of fire. All right, let's get started. Okay, guys, so as I mentioned in today's episode, we are going to be taking a look at fire. And it's really advanced particles. That's what we'll be taking a look at, advanced particle systems here. We'll start off slowly by building the fire itself. After that, we'll add a little bit of smoke. And then we'll add the effects to the characters themselves. Now this, I don't think it's going to be 2 episodes, but if it gets too long, I'm going to have to break it up into 2 separate episodes. I don't want to get overly long, and I like you guys to have shorter episodes that you can really focus on one particular concept. Anyway, so what I'd like to start with right now is creating an actual fire. Let's start off by going into our materials, and we're going to create a brand new material itself. We're going to be creating, you have lots of different options when it comes to fire. You can do it with an actual texture of some kind, and that's what I'm going to be doing, a single image texture. You could do it with a sprite sheet of textures, or you could do it with just plain particles. And all of them will give slightly different results. So experimenting with what we're doing here is going to be kind of up to you. I'm going to focus on using a singular texture to create the fire itself, and then afterwards we'll take a look at texture sheet animation when we move on to the smoke. And that way we're getting both aspects of the concept in one. This is really our first look at advanced particles, so I don't want to go huge, but I do want it to be advanced particles. We're going to start off by creating our actual material, and let's go in here into our materials folder and say create. Let's go to our material, create a random material. We'll call this thing here fire material. That is an awesome name, material. Fire material. And now if we think about how fire works, well, not how fire works, but if we think about what fire is, fire basically is, it starts off with if you're thinking about a campfire or something like that, which is kind of what I want to create here, a fire like a campfire. The fire is going to be large at the bottom, and it's going to get smaller as you go towards the top, as it narrows down. And you kind of get this teardrop shape. And so the actual image you choose as far as your fire material, it's not really extremely important. Just find something that you think looks like a good fire. We're going to set it up. Instead of being the standard material, I'm going to have it use a particle shader here. And we're going to use Particle Additive Soft. You guys can scroll through these and really find what you like the best. There's a lot of different options in there. You might even want to go unlit. It's going to be up to you to really take a look. I'm going to try Particles Additive Soft for this time. We've been using the unlit a fair amount. I'm going to try using this one here right now. And I've got a bunch of different fire materials that I've included, fire textures that I've included. Some of them are the old favorites from Legacy Unity stuff, which this one here is. So I'm going to be using this one here today, and it looks kind of like a fireball, which is perfectly fine. Ultimately, it's going to look the way I want it to look. I'm going to control the shape of it through the actual particle system. So that's great. That's our material right there. Now, with the material created, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to create a brand new particle system, and let's just call this fire. Fire. For now, we'll call it fire. And the fire system itself, like I said, we want the fire itself to be kind of like a campfire. So it's going to be a little wide at the bottom, a little bigger at the bottom, and it's gonna narrow at the top. So there's a few things. First thing we should do right away. Let's right away change it. We'll change our renderer right away. And obviously we're going to be using not the default particle, we're obviously going to be using our new fire. Where are you, fire? EFG. There's our new fire system. Now, obviously, that doesn't look like an awesome campfire, does it? We're gonna create it so that it's going to be, like I said, big at the bottom, small at the top, and slowly drift off so that its actual transparency changes over time as well. Okay, let's go into these actual things now. We'll leave the render itself. Where's my mouse? We'll leave the render itself right there like that for now. And we'll start looking at this. Obviously, we're going to want it to be looping. And I'm also going to want it to be pre-warmed. Pre-warmed meaning that it automatically starts with the fire in place. Otherwise, every single time you start up a fire, it's going to take a second and then burst into flames as it kind of grows up. Now, obviously, I don't want that. So I'm going to start it off pre-warmed so that my fire is always running. It's automatically started. I'm going to change some of my variables here, and some of this stuff here is going to be up to you guys to really decide what you want it to be. My start lifetime, I don't want these things to live extremely long time. 5 seconds is pretty long. And the start speed, I obviously don't want it to be this fast. Look how it's moving at a far too great a speed, and I don't want that. I'm going to reduce it to 1. So the fire itself is moving at a much smaller rate, at a much smaller speed. And right now, it's living far too long, and I don't want that. So I'm going to reduce my start lifetime to, let's say, 1.5 seconds. All right, so that's not so bad. That's going to give me a decent size fire. So basically, I'm looking at the size of the fire before these things here drift off into nowhere land. Let's take a look immediately at the actual shape that we're going to be using here. You've got a number of different options. So let's click on shape. You've got a number of different options as far as the shape is concerned, and depending on what kind of fire you want, you might change your shape. The cone itself, the cone shape will allow the fire to burn upwards, and that's really what I want to happen. I want the fire to burn upwards, not outwards like an explosion, like a hemisphere, like that. So I'm going to leave my shape as cone. What I do want, though, is I'm going to greatly reduce my angle. In fact, I'm going to set my angle to 0, and that is going to give me this kind of barrel shape. That's in the middle of nowhere, isn't it? Let's move this where we can actually see it. Let's put it at 0. And 0 and 0 for now. Burning my character up. Let's move it over a little bit like this. So that's going to give me this little kind of barrel shape, and that's great. That's more what I'm looking for. Now again, it's far too big as far as the shape itself is concerned. I really want it to be a contained fire. So I'm going to reduce this radius. I'm just going to reduce it down. So I've kind of got something singular like this. You see how I'm getting a burning column now, and that's kind of what I'm looking for. Let's make it a nice round number, like 0.3. Okay, so that's kind of giving me a burning column now with my fire all condensed within there. And that's great. That's great. That's really what I want. So I'm going to use that shape. You guys can go through and take a look at the different shapes that are available to see if there's something else that you prefer as far as the kind of fire you want to make is concerned. Like I said, I'm going to make like a campfire. So I'm going to use this shape. All right? Okay, sorry about that. I had to sneeze and had to cut off. I had to cut off the recording there. Sorry about that. Okay, so like I was saying, I'm creating a campfire, and I like the way that kind of looks. That long tubular effect. Now, let's go back to the actual top emissions here. And let's take a look at some of those values. So start speed of 1 is great. I kind of like that as far as the distance is concerned. Let's make them slightly larger. Let's try 1.5. 1.5. So that's giving me more of a rounded shape, and I like that. I'm going to leave it like that. As far as the particles that I've selected are concerned, I kind of like that. The start rotation of 0 is perfectly fine, and obviously I don't want them affected by gravity. I'm going to change my simulation space from local to world, and that way, if I move the fire along like a torch, it's going to leave my my fire like a trail. You can see how I'm doing that. So I'm gonna change the actual simulation space to world, and the start color. Let's change the start color slightly. Let's kind of give it a pinkish hue. This is just aesthetics, really. You guys can choose. The more red, obviously, I make it, the more reddish fire we've got here. Let's make it into I kind of want a light pink. I think that looks pretty good. Again, guys, it's up to you. This is just my personal preferences. Go in there and play. Maybe I want a little bit brighter, actually. Maybe I want a little bit brighter. Go in there and play and see kind of what you like. Maybe like that. All right, there we go. So now I'm kind of getting a little bit of red at the edges, and I like the way that looks. I'm going to leave it like that. Now, the emission itself. The emission, let's take a look at the emission and see. The emission's fine. I don't want anything changed in there. I'm going to leave the emissions as it is. The shape is done. Now, there's a couple of things I'm going to change in here. Obviously, we're gonna make some decisions as far as how this is going to look. Right now, it's a very, very opaque looking flame, and I don't like that. I'm going to change that so that instead we've got less opacity. The color over time is going to change a fair amount, I think. So let's go into color over lifetime, and let's open it up. And I kind of want it to start off a little bit darker. I want it to be a little bit darker flame at the bottom, and I want it to lessening to a kind of an orangish color as we move up. So let's change this right away. I'm going to change my color to I guess kind of a light gray. A light gray to start off with. Maybe something like that. And somewhere along the way, I want it to slowly change into a very orangish color. So I'm gonna change this. I'm gonna find a good hue here. Maybe like that. That's pretty darn orange. But you know what? That's going to change. Let's leave it like that for now. And I'm saying that's going to change because what I want to do is change the alpha of it. Right now, we've got a completely opaque fire. And obviously, fire is not opaque. Towards the bottom, I'm going to leave the opacity pretty high. So let's say I leave it, this is just a guess, somewhere around there, I'm going to leave the opacity itself at 100%, so at 255. But as I come towards the end, I'm going to have the opacity turn way down. All right, to somewhere around 0. And that's giving me a nice soft look at the top of the flames. You can see how much that's changed already. I've got a nice soft look at the top of the flames. And that's what I want, right? As the fire moves away from its actual hot source, it kind of dies off in intensity and becomes this darker color. And that's great. I like the way that looks. I'm going to leave it. Let's take a look at size over lifetime. Now, as I mentioned previously, the size over lifetime is going to change. I want the particles themselves, let's actually open it up, size over lifetime. I want the particles themselves to start off at their full size. So let's first of all take a look. If we take a look at this right here, what we're left with, what we've got here to work with is a curve. And I'm going to adjust this curve so that it looks the way I want it to look. And when this thing starts off, we have some different options down here. When a fire actually starts off, we start off with a nice heavy fire at the bottom, and as these particles move towards the top, I want them to get much smaller. So as their lifespan increases, I want the size of the flames to change. So you can try a number of different ones. That's giving me kind of a spread out fire. That one there is a little too small, I guess. So it's one of these two. I kind of like this one better, actually. I kind of way that looks a little bit better. And I do want to lessen these off. I want this to be flat. So I want it to kind of start off like this. So it starts off flat and ends off flat as well. So you can see now what I'm getting is this tapering. I'm getting this tapering effect of the fire itself. So the flames at the bottom are very large, and as it tapers downwards, as it tapers upwards, you can see that the flames themselves, the actual things, are getting much smaller, kind of like sparks or whatever shooting off the top of the flame. I like the way that looks, so I'm going to leave it just like that. Let's add a little bit of roiling to this fire itself by changing our rotation over lifetime. And we're going to add in a couple of different values here. Instead of just 45, that's kind of giving me a roiling effect. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a random between two constants, and let's say between a negative 45 and 45. And that's going to give me kind of this rolling effect of the actual flames itself. They might be rolling one way or the other. That doesn't look so bad. And I don't know, I think that's probably fine as far as my fire is concerned. I don't mind the way that looks. You might want to play a little bit with the actual size over lifetime or the opacity to kind of get yourself a little bit of flame going. I don't mind the way that looks at all. So for now, I think I'm going to leave this, and I'll come back to it if I want to make any changes. All right, the next thing I want to add to my fire effect, I want to add a number of different things. First of all, this fire is not throwing any light, so I'm obviously going to want to add some kind of light. And additionally, I want to add some kind of smoke. As the flames themselves burn off, it's going to change into smoke. And you've got a couple of different options. I think what I've decided to do is instead of adding a sub-emitter, which is a perfectly valid option to add a sub-emitter, I'd rather just add a secondary smoke effect to this, as well as a secondary light. All right, so we're going to add those right now. So adding a light is very easy. Obviously, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say create, and I'm going to say create light, and for this I'm going to add a point light. The point light itself will allow light in all directions. And if we scroll backwards here, we're going to see with my light selected, we're going to see currently it's in totally the wrong spot. Let's put it at 0 and 0 and 0, and I'm going to drag it and I'm going to drop it on top of my fire. It's going to be part of my fire itself. Now I'm going to 0 this again, which I should have done in the first place. 0 and 0. So there's my light, and with the light selected, like I've got here, we can see the actual size of the light volume, the light space, and that's really going to be up to you to decide how much space the light itself is going to create. There's no right or wrong. I think that is far too large, so I'm gonna reduce my range a great deal. Let's put it at 2. That's not so bad. That's not so bad. So right, something around there. We just want a glow, basically. I want to have a glow that comes off for this light. I'm not looking for anything that's going to light my entire scene. You can go in and you can choose, once you've got your size kind of the way you like it, go in and choose the color. And you can go yellowish or orangish. I'm going to go more towards the orange side, kind of getting like a firelight. Kind of orangish red, maybe. Something like that. That might be not intense enough. Let's go down a little more. Something like that. So that's going to give me an orange glow. Whenever my character steps in front of this, the light itself is going to hit them, and it's going to light up my character. I'm going to add some shadows to it as well. I'm just going to add some soft shadows. There's no point in going anything other than that. This is not like a strong light. The soft flickering shadows should be fine, and that's probably fine. That's probably all I need. I'm going to turn my intensity up a bit to, let's say, around, let's make it around 3.5. And basically all that's going to do is it's going to make it more intense within that specific range. So that's what I want to do. All right, so around 3.5 is probably good, and a range of 2.5, something like that. Let's try 2.5, make it a little bit... 2.25. Make it a little bit larger. All right, and that's really all I want to do for the light. The light itself has now been included in my fire, so it's within the hierarchy itself, and that way the fire is going to always have a glow associated with it. All right, so that's my fire again. So far, so good. Now, there's one other thing I want to do, and that's add smoke. I want to add smoke to this as well. As the fire kind of dies off towards the top, I want to add a smoke effect. So it kind of looks like the flames are then cooling and leaving only smoke behind. Okay, so the smoke concept goes a little bit further. The first thing we're going to need to do is make another new material. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say create, and I'm going to say material. I always have to search for it. And let's just call this smoke. Am I spelling smoke right? No. Smoke material. All right, this will be our smoke material. And for this one, once again, I think we're going to use a particle system here, and our particle. Sorry, not a particle system. We're going to use a particle system, of course. We're going to use our particles, and we will once again use our additive soft. And it's a really good option. Like I said, you guys can scroll through and check out the different options as far as that's concerned to find out which one you like the best. In fact, you know what? Let's change it up a bit. Let's use our particle, and this time we'll use let's try alpha blended pre-multiply. In fact, we'll go back and take a look at what the options are afterwards. Anyway, so for now we'll use this one here, and let's take a look at our particle system. I'm going to be using a texture. For this, there's a number of textures I've got included in there. I also have a fire sheet texture in case you want to use that. Let's go down and find our smoke. Okay, so there's a number of different options here for smoke. There's single particle smoke. If you want to use that, you're perfectly welcome to. I'm going to be using this 4x4 smoke sheet. All right, so that's what I'm going to use for this actual thing. And it should come out like this. We should kind of see it like that. Great. And the alpha blended pre-multiply is actually going to give us a really nice smoky kind of effect when this is all said and done. Okay, so the smoke itself now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new We're going to create a brand new particle system. And once again, let's move it out of the way. Let's move our fire out of the way for now so we can actually see this. Bam, and let's put our particle system right here at 0 and 0 and 0. And let's move it here where we can see it. So right away, with that said and done, let's immediately dump our default textures for our brand spanking new smoky texture. Bam. Now, right away we say, whoa, that's not what we wanted to see. We don't want to see that. And this is the first time we're really looking at a texture sheet. So this is not what we want to see. Obviously, we want to see individual smoke in there. And what we're going to do we're going to open up this new tab, Texture Sheet Animation. We're going to turn it on. And the first thing we see is this is a 4x4 texture, so I'm going to change this to 4x4. All right, and that is going to give us, over time, a change in the actual smoke. You can see how it's changing from these kind of whitish to this kind of dark stuff at the very, very top. All right, great. So far, so good. And that's how the texture sheet animation works. Basically, it just takes a look at the texture sheet, and it plays one image after the other. Okay, now let's go through and take a look at some of the variables involved in this actual smoky setup here. First of all, the duration is far too long. Let's change our duration to, let's say, 3. And give that a try. And once again, we're going to leave it looping, and we're going to pre-warm it so that it's already smoking by the time we get on into view. The start lifetime is, we're going to greatly reduce the speed. We're going to have the speed set up to be something like, let's say, 0.8. And that's going to give us a kind of a nice big puff. But we've got an issue here where obviously now the start lifetime is not enough. I want the smoke to be rising. So let's give it a little bit more speed. Let's give it something like 7. That'll give us a little bit more, more speed upwards, and that's good. That's not so bad. Now, obviously, it doesn't look like smoke at all yet, but we're going to get there, don't worry. The actual start color. The start color, we're going to leave it as white, but we're going to turn the alpha down. Let's turn our alpha down a long way. Oops, I didn't grab it in the right spot. Let's turn our alpha way down. Let's say somewhere around there as a start alpha. And that way we've got this kind of see-through misty look, which is really what we want out of smoke, right? It's not opaque in any way at all. The start size, it's a little bit small right now, so let's turn it up to, let's say, 3. Now that looks a little bit big, and obviously it is. We're gonna change how it's coming out in 1 second. In fact, once again, right away, let's change our simulation space to world so that when we drag our smoke around, we're leaving behind a nice smoke trail. Okay, great. Yeah, that's probably pretty good. Let's take a look at our cone shape. Let's go down here to shape. Once again, you have an option on how you want the smoke to come out. Now, again, I want this thing to be kind of streamed. I want it to be rising. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with the fire, where I'm going to greatly reduce this. We can try it at 0, and we can try reducing our actual radius. I think I had, what, 0.4? I forget what I had it at. We can try reducing it like that. Now, I want a little bit of spread with the smoke. I don't want it to be so small, so we can give it a slight angle. Let's give it like, let's try it at 0.25. And that's going to give a very, very slight angle, and that should be perfectly fine. Now, still, it doesn't look the way I want it to. We've kind of got this nice white mist, which is ultimately what I want it to be at the bottom, a nice white mist, and tending towards black as it gets to the top. And that's really what I want it to do. At the bottom of the fire is just going to be this like white smoke, and as it rises up, it's going to turn black. And that's how fire normally looks to me, anyway. This is just my own personal opinion. So I like the way this looks so far, but we're going to have to make some more changes here. First of all, our color over lifetime. Let's change our color over lifetime. Now, this one here is a fairly, I want this to be kind of complicated, to be honest. First of all, white at the bottom and tending towards dark at the top is great. Let's move it down into the dark gray zone, maybe something like that. That's probably pretty good. And I want it to be, well, let's take a look at this first of all. At the very bottom, where we had this kind of white misty look as far as the alpha is concerned, I want it to be completely transparent down here. So I'm going to turn my alpha all the way down to 0. And that's already looking better. We kind of got this smokiness going on here. I don't mind that at all. Somewhere in the middle here, I'm going to add another one. And at this point, I kind of want the alpha to start to kick in. So I want the alpha to be a little bit higher, somewhere around here. It's going to be up to you. This is a lot of eyeball. All right, this is a lot of eyeball, and I want to have, let's put it around, that's probably fine, 173. And once again at the top, as we move towards the top of this smoke column, I'm going to want the alpha to turn way down again. Maybe, I don't know, something like that. So we've got like the smoke kind of dissipating, around 120, 107, something like that, where we've got the smoke itself dissipating. And I like the way that looks. I think this probably looks okay. Let's change where the color itself is to to somewhere down here. That doesn't look so bad. So that's giving me a nice smoky look at the bottom where we're getting this puff of white smoke at the very bottom, and we're getting dark smoke on top as this thing actually changes. We might be able to change up this alpha a bit, make it a little bit more. Make it a little darker. There we go. That doesn't look so bad. Maybe something like that. And again, guys, it's just going to be eyeball. You got to eyeball it. There's no right answer and there's no wrong answer. For this stuff here, it's all about what you think. Now, again, I want to change the size over the lifetime of it, and the smoke at the bottom. Where's size over lifetime? Bam. The smoke at the bottom. In our case, we want the smoke at the bottom to be very, very small. It's kind of the opposite of what the fire was. At the bottom of this thing here, we want to have almost no smoke, and at the top, we want to have. Let's do it like this. We want to have the smoke kind of rising. That doesn't look so bad. Let's flatten this out. So just like our fire, so we get our nice flat going in like that. That is looking pretty good, actually. I like the way that smoke looks. Yeah, I like the way that's looking. So one last thing right now, the smoke itself is just rising, and we can see the pattern in the smoke itself. We can kind of see the white pattern. So let's add a little bit of rotation over lifetime. We got to turn it on. And the rotation over lifetime, it's going to be up to you again. Let's random between 2 and negative 45 and 45. And that is giving us a nice kind of rolling in the smoke, some roiling in the smoke itself. I like the way that looks. And that's probably enough. As far as our smoke effect is concerned, that is probably enough. Okay, great. So let's put this thing here. Let's change the name of it first of all, because it shouldn't be called particle system. Let's call it smoke PS. Smoke particle system is great. And first of all, let's drag the smoke itself, because we can use this later on. I'm going to drag this and drop it in my prefabs. So I've got myself a smoke prefab right there. That's great. And I'm going to change the name of this point light. Why didn't I call it, let's call it fire light. All right, I'm going to grab the smoke. I'm going to drag it and I'm going to drop it on fire. And I'm going to reset it right now so it's at 0, 0. All right, and once that gets done there, that is looking pretty good. That looks I think that looks pretty good. It's up to you guys, though, to go through and make some changes on how you want it to look. We've got ourselves nice fire down there with the smoke coming off. All right, guys, there's a couple of more things that we're going to do, and we might as well just add it to this episode. This is going to be a long episode, and I'm really, really sorry. The last thing I want to do is actually make this thing into something that can harm our player. Currently, if it's in place, let's say we've got it here, our player can, if I just drag it where the player, oops, I didn't want to drag that, I want to drag the whole thing, fire. If I move this, when we hit play, obviously our player can run through and he's not, or she, whatever it is, it's obviously he, is not going to be affected by it, right? And that's not what we want. This fire is supposed to be something dangerous to our player, so we want to set it up with a few other options. Is that light in the right spot? Yeah, that's in the right spot. All right, a few other options. So on the fire itself, we're going to add a couple of things. On the fire, we're going to add let me go over here, close off my particle system. We're going to add a new component, and that new component is going to be a physics sphere collider. And really and truly, you can pick any collider you want. It doesn't really matter in this game. The sphere collider is going to work perfectly fine. And basically, it's just setting up an area of danger. All right, if the player runs into it, that's the area of danger for this player. We can maybe make it a little smaller and maybe lower it a little bit. No, it's probably fine, just like that. Maybe make it a little smaller and then lower it. Because really and truly, if you run in the fire, oops, I'm pushing the wrong one. I'm pushing all the wrong stuff. I'm going to lower it down a little bit here. Really and truly, we're really worried about the fire itself and not the smoke, so you can just adjust it so that it encompasses your fire. And this is going to be a trigger. This is going to be a trigger, and the reason why is we want to use it as alongside our add component, add our script, our enemy damage. All right, and how much damage does this do is going to be totally up to you. I want to do a fair amount of damage. Later on, we'll discuss effects like having the player catch fire or having something else catch fire. We'll discuss that a little bit later on. But for now, we're just going to have this thing damage our player. Let's give it a damage of 2, and let's give it a damage rate of let's say 0.25. So it's going to do not a lot of damage, let's make it even 1. It's not going to do a lot of damage to you, but it's going to do it fairly quickly. Let's make it 2. It's not going to do a lot of damage, but it's going to do it fairly often. All right, and for the pushback, I don't want that. The player can run through this as much as they want, run back and forth through without actually being pushed away, but they're actually going to take damage and maybe die. Now, boom, when I hit play, when my player runs inside of it, we're not actually seeing anything right now, but I should be slowly burning until I burst into flames. Later on, guys, we're actually going to add I didn't burst into flame, I burst into blood splatter. Later on, guys, we're going to add some different GUI effects that are going to, and some audio effects that are going to tell the player that they're being damaged by different things. And at that point in time, we will learn a lot more. We'll learn a lot more about how to actually indicate to your player, because it's very important. You want whoever's playing your game to understand they're being damaged by this. And obviously, in the situation we're in right now, we don't have that. Right now, the player just burns and then eventually dies. Like I said, in an upcoming episode as well, we will talk about things like the physical effect of catching fire. So you might want something to catch fire later on. All right, guys, that works the way I want it to work. Everything's looking pretty good. I am going to take this entire fire right now, and I'm going to drag it, and I'm going to drop it right in here inside of our prefab, so that way I can use the fire whenever I want. I'm going to take this fire, and let's just add it for now on top of spaghetti. On top of this ammo crate. Oh no, the ammo is actually burning. Alright, and you just gotta kind of put it the way you like it. Put it the way you like it. And if you want to know a little better exactly where your fire is, you can take the bottom tag right here at the bottom. Sorry, take this thing here and change it so that it's showing where your fire is. Alright, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I hope you enjoyed it. It was an interesting one. This is the first time we did any kind of advanced particles, and you can start adding some interesting stuff to your scenes. Particles go a long way in making a game look really, really awesome. And let me just move this so it's kind of in the player's way. Is it? Yeah, it's pretty good. Particles go a long way in making your game look really good, and adding them in is relatively simplistic. It takes a little bit of getting used to and a little bit of practice, but once you've done so, guys, you can start adding some really, really cool effects. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I enjoyed bringing it to you. If you did, let me know with a thumbs up. Let me know with a thumbs down if you didn't, if there's something I did wrong, or if you think I could have done something better or a different way. That is perfectly cool. Do not ever be afraid to let me know that I'm doing something in the way you don't like it. And if I think that your criticism is good, then I can make changes. And if I don't think your criticism is good, then, well, whatever. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Thumbs up, thumbs down, comments down below, and if you haven't done so, please take a few seconds to subscribe. Have yourselves a wonderful day, everyone.